Dr. Swett, the special investigating team of the Supreme Court of India has said that Narendra Modi cannot be implicated with the Gujarat riots of 2002. Why do you still consider him a pariah who shouldn't be allowed into your country?
Well, I think that those are your words, certainly not our words. But under the International Religious Freedom Act, which established the commission on which I serve, our government is discouraged from giving visas to those who have been involved in some degree or in some manner with the grave violation of human rights and the oppression of religious freedom. And it's our considered judgment, which is why the commission on which I serve sent a letter to this effect to Secretary Clinton last year, that really there remain questions, there remain doubts. As you know, a large number of Indian parliamentarians relatively recently wrote to President Obama encouraging him also not give a visa to Mr. Modi. One of his former colleagues was recently evicted for events, for her role in events pertaining to the 2002 Gujarat riots. There are sworn affidavits. There are conclusions and questions raised by a variety of Indian human rights organizations, by the National Human Rights Commission in India. And so it really is our view that there is enough of a question and a doubt, and perhaps more information will be coming forward, that the issue of visa at this time
but ma'am,
would not...
at the end of the day, it has to be based on what the courts say. And I assume that you would have faith in what our Supreme Court in India has to say. And at the moment, he has not been convicted of anything. So therefore, it seems to me that you consider him guilty until he proves himself innocent. And it should be the other way around.
Well, you know, I would beg to differ. We're not talking about whether or not a court in India deems the evidence sufficient to hold him accountable in a court of law.
This is the Supreme Court of India. This is the ultimate court in the country.
Yes.
It's not a trial court. It's not a high court. It's the Supreme Court of the country which has said so.
I understand, but what we're talking about is whether or not under our laws we are obligated, or whether it's the right policy, whether it's the principal thing to do to issue a visa. This isn't a matter of a legal adjudication, and I would point out to you that the law in question in the United States doesn't require that there has been a legal adjudication in order for us to reach conclusions. Obviously, India, you know, is a country for which we have enormous respect, the world's largest democracy, and there is much to admire there. But sometimes, even in our country, people feel that courts don't always get it right. I could cite chapter and verse and some very events and incidents, even in our own country, where a duly constituted court, sometimes even a Supreme Court, people may feel, well, you know, maybe they got it right, maybe they didn't. And so the legislation in question doesn't hinge on whether or not there has been a legal adjudication.
But ma'am, what about the fact that the US-India Chamber of Commerce believes that reaching out to Narendra Modi is a priority? What about the fact that countries like the United Kingdom seem to have reversed their earlier position? What about the fact that a country like Australia, and these are all key partners of the United States, continue to reach out to Modi? Why is it that you believe that he shouldn't be given the benefit of doubt at this stage, when so many other countries who are all partners of the United States believe it's in their interest to be reaching out to a man who could well be the next Prime Minister of the country if the BJP wins the elections?
Well, you know, these are all excellent questions. I would respond in part by pointing out that the commission on which I serve has a very specific mission. We are focused on advancing the cause of international freedom of religion, conscience, and belief. And so we try to take what we believe are principled stands that affirm that fundamental mission which we have. I understand, I recognize that the parts of government have different and in many ways broader portfolios. There are a lot of dimensions to the U.S.-India relationship, and you know, we are focused on what we feel is a matter of principle and supporting fundamental human rights. The events that occurred in Gujarat in 2002 occurred under Minister Modi's watch, on his watch. They were not, simply unfortunate sectarian division or strife. These were horrific events in which not only did thousands lose their lives and over 100,000 were displaced.
But Dr. Swett, I don't mean to interrupt, but the fact of the matter is what you're saying is something which is common knowledge over here in India, and there isn't anybody who feels any differently about the horror which happened in 2002. But the question is, until such time that he is proven guilty, why do you believe that you are necessarily in the right? Why do you believe he shouldn't be given, he shouldn't be allowed to visit the United States? Isn't it in the interests of the United States to be reaching out to a man who could end up representing all of India?
Well, you raise a very good question, but it points out the reality that often our interests, the country may be somewhat in conflict with one another. We understand that Minister Modi is a very significant political figure in India and certainly could well be the next Prime Minister. So certainly there are interests there. What we're saying is that one of our interests as a nation is to stand up for our values. We do believe that sufficient questions remain, sworn affidavits, conviction of close colleagues and those who are part of his government. Yeah. Very serious questions that have been raised by a broad cross-section of Indian parliamentarians. So, certainly we are not alone in saying that this matter has not been sufficiently put to rest. And when you speak about the interests of the United States, as a commission dedicated to defending international religious freedom,
you do realize,
freedom of conscience and belief, we think that one of our interests is to stand for our highest principles.
Right. Dr. Swett, you do realize that you may well be in a minority in your own country. Your views are appreciated, obviously, by the US government, but they're not necessarily binding. You do provide reports, and correct me if I'm wrong, to the US president. But the fact of the matter is that there are many in the United States who believe that Narendra Modi is somebody who needs to be backed at this stage. So, correct me if I'm wrong, your views are not binding on the US government. Is that right?
No, they are not binding. We make recommendations to the Secretary of State, to the President, and to the Congress. But the ultimate decision, of course, really lies in the hands of the administration. So we wrote, and you've probably seen it, a letter to then Secretary Clinton. We had written previously to Secretary Rice, and we have expressed our views. The decision as to whether or not to ultimately issue a visa doesn't lie with the purview of the Commission. But we hope, because this is our mandate, this is our portfolio, that these other very important and powerful branches of our government listen and take into consideration the views that we've expressed. And and there are different opinions. There are certainly those within our government and within our Congress who support giving Minister Modi.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough, ma'am. But one way or the other, a special investigating team from the Supreme Court of India has not named him as being guilty. They've looked into various crimes. But Mr. Vyas, you listened to what Dr. Katrina Lantos Swett had to say. There continues to be opposition to your plans to try and internationalize, in a sense, Narendra Modi, and the US would have to be an important player in that. Do you feel that you're going to run into problems in reaching out to the United States?
Well, I think in the first instance, Vishnu, I would say that she is fully entitled to have her own view as the Vice Chairman of the Commission. That is not the official view of the United States government. But I would at the same time like to say that, she is willing to place her faith in the human rights commissions in India, but she doesn't want to believe the apex court of the country, which definitely is on the highest pedestal as far as India is concerned. So I think, I personally believe
Dr.
that
Vyas, there has been no final judgment as far as the Supreme Court is concerned. The SIT has said something, but the Supreme Court hasn't ruled one way or the other. And the SITs and some of the aspects of this case continue to be considered by the SIT.
Well, let us go to, in that case, the maxim of the jurisprudence, which says that unless one is pronounced guilty, He is an innocent person.